Hello, and welcome again to another episode of One Starfish, where our mission is to help change the world one starfish or one person at a time. As always, guys, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, share. That's how we get the word out about what we do. I'm excited for our guest today. I just met Becky just like 10 minutes ago. We just had a chat. She's in Virginia right now. Her company's a Market Exec. There we go. Get it. She just started only 2 years ago, and before that, she's actually been in journalism, which we're gonna get into that a little bit because that's exciting, and she's been able to take that, and she's putting that into something, within her business to help people build a brand, and her book she just authored is called Brand Voice, so I'm excited to go into that. As well, she's a family woman, she's got kids, doing all the things, so excited to have her on. Thanks for being on today, Becky.
Thank you for having me, Angela. It was so fun even before we started this. Like you said, we got to talk for a hot second. It was fun to connect.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into this. So tell us what got you into, first of all, journalism years ago. And then kind of just fast forward as you go, what got you out of it? You went through various jobs and then randomly decided to become an entrepreneur. And then kind of like, let's go to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as a journalist, I've always been a storyteller. I love telling people stories. I love nonfiction. It's really what I mean, even personally, if I'm writing or well, wrote a book, but when I'm reading a book, it's always going to be a nonfiction book that I pick. And, I'll tell you kind of a quick story is my career path started at a moment I would have never known at the time. But looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's what got me on this journey, which was I played soccer my entire life. I played, and at the time I was 16, so my entire 16 years on the earth. And I had been the captain of my high school team, blah, blah, blah. And I got cut my junior year in high school. And I was devastated because that was who I was. That was my brand voice, really. I mean, that was how I showed up in the world. And if you said, "Who are you?" I wouldn't tell you anything other than I'm a soccer player. And my mom and dad let me, have my moment of mourning, so to speak. And finally, they're like, okay, what are we going to do? Like, we're not going to just go to school and come home. Like, what else are we doing? And, figure it out. So I decided to do theater, which was wildly different than playing soccer. And I fell in love with it. And my senior year, the soccer coach asked if I'd come back because the year ahead of me was really good and they'd all graduated. So then they kind of needed me senior year. And I didn't do it out of spite or anything along those lines. I just was like, I don't think I'm going to. My mom said you can do either one, but I'm not letting you do both, which aggravated me. I'm like, "No, I really want to do both." But you guys, I did the theater thing, and that was it. I went from theater to senior year, junior, senior year to college, which was communication major, to broadcast journalism. And then off we went to the races and now owning my own company and helping people uncover their brand voice, which is what really drives revenue. And it all started by getting cut from my high school soccer team. Like, you just never know where your journey is going to lead you or where it starts. It's amazing.
I love that right off the start. I love that. So, you're listening, you're going through something rough in your life right now. Normally, it is in the hardest times that the biggest rewards come. And so that's usual. And so, I mean, at 16, it's hard to like try to process all that. You're dealing with everything else. But that was, if it hadn't been cut, you wouldn't have gotten into theater. You would have just continued in soccer and been happily. And who knows where that path would have led. It would have led somewhere totally different than where you are today. So,
I'd like to say at this age, especially, I would not be playing pro soccer. Don't think I was ever going to do it, but by now I would have definitely not been doing it. So I don't know where I would have been.
right? And so that's so crazy that catalyst, which, like I said, for most people, it's when we're going through tough times. I was just talking to someone today. We're going through tough times and we're like, it's hard to see the light, but you never know what that tough time's gonna, lead. So right off the start, you had that, and your parents did a great job of like, quit sulking, figure something else out, and you
Yeah.
did. So that was cool too. So if you're a parent, you know, deal with that. So you got into journalism. What you didn't know? You said how many years? 24 years? Was that right? Did I catch that?
24. I started when I was 5. I'm not that old.
Yeah, I was thinking that you were. But that's a long time to stay in one area. So you must have liked it quite a bit. What made you quit it?
So, I'll tell you, I come from a generation where I started my career where everyone stuck around for the 40-year gold watch. You've been here for decades, we're going to give you the gold watch or whatever it is. And now everyone moving into the career world for the first 5, 10 years, that are newer are like, oh my gosh, who would stay in it? job for 4 years. And so, just again, I kind of spanned both of those mindsets. And so I started, I mean, people thought I was crazy wanting to go in news. Like, what are you thinking? Why would you do something like that? It's so chaotic. It's so crazy. But I did it because I loved it. I love telling people stories. I am 110% people person. Um, love to connect with people and help them share with the rest of the world what they have going on. And after 24 years, I didn't want to necessarily stop the storytelling part of it, but I realized in news, at least in broadcast journalism, you move your way up the markets. That's how you work. That's why I moved all over. I was in Light River Junction, Vermont, tiny, tiny, tiny market. I was in Midland and Lubbock, Texas. I went up to Green Bay, Wisconsin. Then I went to Cincinnati. I mean, like, bing, bing, bing. But that's the journey of a journalist often. I mean, it's not that odd if you talk to a journalist to hear that same story. But what I was realizing after 24 years or sooner than that, because I obviously had started working on moving on before the day I did it, I didn't have that challenge anymore. And I really like to be challenged. And, someone in my life once said, you're either green and growing or ripe and rotten. And I was like, I will always be green and growing. Like, it's not even by choice. It is just the way my brain works. It is what I naturally do. And I think to use that in a very literal sense, felt like I was maybe not as green and growing by the end of my journalism because I had no matter if you're in a small market or a big market, I was still doing the same stories. It just was for a bigger audience, or bigger, yeah, basically a bigger target audience, people who are listening. Um, and I have always had kind of a general rule, if you say that you put one foot in an area that you know securely, like you are in it, you know what you're doing, you're confident, and then you put your other foot, in this case, hands, in an area that you don't know, that might be a little scary, that's something you're not quite sure of, and, so that's kinda what I did. I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna move on." So my first gig out of news was not broadcast, that was what I was doing, was research science, and I hadn't done research science before other than news stories on it, and I loved it. I loved every minute of it.
Okay, so you just decided you wanted to challenge, and then you went into various different jobs for how long? And then you decided to start your own business.
Yeah, so I did research science and then I went into academia and worked at a business college, which was really funny. It was the Pamplin College of Business at Virginia Tech, and I was also getting my MBA there. So I was a student of and an employee of the College of Business. So I got to see the professors and instructors in two different ways, as a colleague and as their student. And as I made that shift from journalist into higher ed and in the corporate world, I had gotten a feeling from a lot of people like, "Oh, you're a storyteller. That's cute." No one ever used that word, but I kinda got that vibe. Um, and that's why I got my MBA. Now, again, I guess I could have probably just learned a few things about data and not leaned in that heavily, but I'm like, "All right, I'm gonna own this." Everyone's like, "Oh, data, 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 data. That's where it's at," and kind of forget storytelling. So I did for a hot second. But then as I moved through those different verticals, always marketing and communication, just different, industries, I realized, you know what, they're right. Data is so imperative. And really, it's something I've always known as a journalist. You always do evidence based, fact based, data driven, you call it whatever you want, stories. And so that nonfiction and how to build a compelling story that really connects with people, but based on facts and information, both qualitative and quantitative data, was what I've been doing all along. So, after I got out of the MBA, I kind of came full circle and I'm like, you know what? You guys are right. Data is important. But what you collectively, not everyone, but generally are missing is what to do with that data, how to build the stories from that. And because at the end of the day, no one in the history of ever never in the history of ever did someone grab an Excel sheet and say, "Hey, look at this great look at these numbers. You wanna buy my widget?" I mean, no, like, or service or whatever. It's the stories that connect people. So if you can take those data points, understand the stories they tell, then tell those stories, then someone's gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, you have moved me to want to do the thing." And one of the things we learned in the MBA, and it stuck with me of all the things, was this thing called the hierarchy of effects. And at the end of the day, high level nutshell, people think, people feel, and then people do. And what you need to pay attention to that path is feel is always and forever right before do. What makes people feel? Stories. You connect with people through stories. So thinking about something, you connect with them and make them feel, and then the action takes place. And that's what we want at the end of the day is action. So it really has a lot of journalistic qualities to what I'm doing right now. I'm just not on air. That's all.
A different area here on the podcast. So similar.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm on this air.
Yeah, I love it. So then you decided to start your own business. Um, and you had never done a business before. Was anyone around you an entrepreneur? Um, or like, where did that come from?
Right? So, no, I mean, both my parents were high school teachers growing up. My sister's an attorney, worked for a law firm, but now is in-house at a company. All my friends, doctors, veterinarians, I mean, they're all people that work for their W-2s. So when I was a reporter, that's what I did. And then I moved to Roanoke. And again, this is kind of that like everything happens in life for a reason. But I met a couple people, two very good friends of mine, Laura and Annette, are two people I can think about off the top of my head that are both entrepreneurs and have been for years. And both of them are like, you have a very entrepreneurial mindset. It's what you think, you do. You should really think about it. And fractional chief marketing officer had come crossed my inbox, crossed my desk, whatever you want to say, over the years. And I thought, okay, I'm going to look more into it. And I realized as a fractional chief marketing officer, you're the CMO for more than one company. And so you need to know how to pivot. You need to be adaptive. And these are all things that I did all day, every day in journalism. Running and gunning and running out in the store. Like I'm able to swoop in, figure something out pretty darn fast and get things going down the track again. And so my friend was like, I mean, what you do and your background, and now that you've got your MBA, it just fits. Like you should really look at it. And I guess I just heard it enough times that I thought, all right, I'm going to try this. And I was driving to work one day, my last W-2 gig. I was listening to NPR. Ironically, I was listening to the news. And I had turned it on in the middle of an interview, and the reporter had said to this woman she was interviewing, it must have been really sad at the dinner table for your family when you were in the hospice business, because that's what they had done. I didn't know that. I just heard her question that you guys were in hospice for 31 years. So at the end of the workday, what was dinner conversation like? Must have been sad. And the woman said, no, actually, it was quite the opposite. It was really interesting during those 31 years of my family owning a hospice company and growing up in it to hear from people who were in the final moments of their lives and what mattered most to them. And she said, always the takeaway was people will either regret it what they didn't do or they were so happy that they did the thing. And I had only one person stopping me from going out on my own, and it was me and my goofy fear. So, I looked out my windshield as I was driving. I'm like, okay, I hear you. And so here I am 2 years later.
So when you started it, what were some of the like what did your husband say? Obviously there's definitely got to be some spousal support in all of this. You're going from making an income to not making an income. Um, how did that go over and what did you end up doing in order to get the support, I guess, if you didn't have it at the beginning?
No, I did have the support. It'd been something we've been talking about for a while. So I think he was excited for me and was like, let's just, do it, you know? Um, and I had some money saved up. And so that helped. I mean, I didn't have a ton saved up. So in hindsight, I'm kind of glad I had a little, like they say, ignorance is bliss. I kind of am glad I had that ignorance because I think I thought I knew what I was getting into and I'm fine and I was able to do it. But looking back, I'm like, probably would have been better to have a little more padding than I did. Um, but I talk to entrepreneurs all the time, and there are moments where you've got to really figure out how to make ends meet. And here's kind of my pitch, so to speak, for being an entrepreneur. Like going out and jumping out and doing the thing is, I was like, you know what? It is beyond exciting, super energizing, and you have a little bit of holy shit mixed in, and that is what keeps the fuel going because you can't let grass grow under your feet.
Really cool. What motivated you to continue on the days that you didn't feel like it? Maybe you had a good day and then you had a really bad day that was like, "What am I doing?" Got a bunch of no's. people not whatever it was? What got you out of bed those days?
Not my friends. I mean, again, back to my book, People Plus Data Drive Results, and to think, feel, do. Feelings are everything. Feel like to get you out of bed in the morning. Well, the reason that you didn't feel like getting out of bed was how you felt. It always goes back to feelings. Well, I was feeling crummy that day. What do I need to not feel crummy? I need to find somebody. For me, it's people to make me get out of my own head and let me know, hey, it's fine. I've been there. And I did have that luck with Laura and Annette and some of my other friends who are entrepreneurs to be able to reach out and be like, I am scared as hell today. Like, this is one of those days. What was I thinking? And they were there for the good and the bad. And so they were there for it. And so on the days that I had success and I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys, I just converted this client that I've been dying to convert and it happened. I did it. I can do
And
this.
do this.
Yeah. And so for me, being an entrepreneur, it fits very well into that bucket that I have in my brain of one foot in an area I know and can do, which is what I'm doing, the marketing, the communication, helping my clients grow. Like, I am in it to win it, man. I got it. I am confident. I have no problem. And then one foot is in the, oh my God, I'm doing it for myself and I have to convert clients and do the sales pitches and all that area. Or for crying out loud, just doing my finances in QuickBooks. I hate that stuff, but that's, you've got to do the stuff you don't like to get to the things that you do.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So tell us a little bit about what you do and what sets you apart.
Yeah, so as a fractional chief marketing officer, your goal and your job for your clients is to make sure that you bring them revenue growth at the end of the day. I mean, you can say all day long, look at these great marketing stats. We got great click-through rates on our email, et cetera, et cetera. And from a marketing perspective, you do need to have those. But that's not what you report over to the CEO, because no CEO in their right mind is going to say, oh, great, you're doing your job. My revenue tanked this month, but marketing got great email click-through rates. So, the thing that I really do is I make sure that every aspect of marketing funnels into driving revenue at the end of the day. And again, what I really do that sets me apart is taking my journalism background and helping people build that story that connects, because I believe with all my heart, because I've seen it and the data has backed it, that when there are stories that connect people, that is when revenue grows. And so that is a big part of what I bring, is that empathy, that brand voice, that storytelling. And the storytelling, goes back to the empathy, I guess, that I just said. It just, when you tell someone a story, you just connect with them. You don't laugh with people you don't like, you just, or that you don't trust, even more importantly. And stories build that trust. And that's why you have to have an evidence-based story. Can't make it up and go out there and throw it out there to the world and be like, yep, that's right. And like, will they figure out that I don't really know what I'm talking about? Everybody has data. And I think that's what they get nervous. Like, I'm not a data analyst. That's not what I do. Heck, that's not what I do either. But I understand data and I understand how to turn it into stories that connect to drive people. Because again, the thinking doesn't just skip right over to the doing. Feeling is in the middle. And that's where that data and the thinking range turns into feeling, which turns into action. So that storytelling and that journalistic evidence-based storytelling is really what I do. And then once we get at it, I can help you find all the marketing paths to get you to the end goal, because there's so many
Tell
of
us a
them.
little bit about
So
how
many.
someone finds their story.
I'm sorry, what you said?
How Tell us, how does someone find their story?
You really need to look at both your quantitative and your qualitative data. And when you say that, that sounds so lame and so boring. But if you give some examples of it, for example, quantitatively, look at your social media pages and see who is paying attention to you. And it's free. Facebook, LinkedIn, they give you free data. What are the demographics of those people? So there's some good quantitative data for you right there. Then look at some more of the qualitative. When people are asking you questions or people are commenting on your Facebook or your LinkedIn posts, what are the things that people come to you? Well, look, everyone's coming to me to ask me about how they use their data to build their story. Okay, well then that's qualitatively something that I know about myself. That's really what sets me apart. At the beginning, I wouldn't have told you that. Only 2 years ago, I was like, okay, I need to just do the marketing journey for these people. It's what's really important. And I thought, okay, if I'm paying attention to really my own self and paying attention to what people are asking me, what I've been doing all along is taking my journalistic skills and converting it into story and evidence-based stories for these people. So let's become more deliberate about that. Like, let's start saying that is what is my differentiator. That is my value add. Don't just do it. Like, be more deliberate and intentional about it, which is what started me down the path of writing my book, and what has really started me in building out a growth framework that I give, that I lead clients through. Like, all of these things I was already doing, but the qualitative evidence really pointed to that to me. And then another great qualitative thing is the story I told you at the very beginning when I told you about how getting cut from a soccer team is really what brought me into my career world. And I've got plenty more stories where that came from about adversity and how I came through the other side so much stronger because of it. Maybe on a different path. Maybe I didn't end up on the path I had hoped and prayed to be on, but then that just meant it wasn't meant to be. And so that resilience, that all points to, I told you, fun, smart, and resilient are my brand voice. And if you look at a lot of that qualitative data, that all points to that resilience. And so, those are some of the things that you can look at the very earliest stages. If you're talking about companies and corporations, oh my gosh, they have so much data in the sandbox to play with. I can't stand it. Like, there's profit margins and supply chain and cost of goods sold. And, but all of those things make a difference. You don't just look at like, oh, we're selling more of X and not Y, or our profit margin is higher for X and not Y. Well, let's look at that. Is it because you're selling more, or are you selling less, but, one product costs more to make than another? And are you maybe not hitting the right people? Because again, you need to know your story, because you might have this fantastic story, but you're not telling it to the right people. And so you need to know who needs to hear it. And then that could open the floodgates for a product that maybe wasn't doing so well. You might also look at the data and be like, this one needs to kick rocks. We're going to kick this one to the curb. It's not working for us. But all of those data points point to your brand voice and who you are and how you show up in the world.
That is a
Does that help?
information. I don't know. It's a lot of information. If you're listening to this and you're like, wow, that's a lot of information. Sounds good. Definitely reach out to Becky. We'll have all our information in the show notes so she can maybe break things down simpler. I like you said, when you get into data, I'm just like, woo, for me, I'm like, and I'm in the financial industry, but still, like, data is like not my strong suit. I'm like, I don't know what she's all the data part, but that's what you are an expert about. Which is super cool. So if someone came to you though, simplified and said, how do I like, I don't know, something from your book, what is brand voice actually about? Like, how
Mhm.
does someone actually find that?
Yeah. So, I mean, when you look at your brand voice, and again, for people in my book especially, I mean, yeah, I wrote this because I had a lot of more like solopreneurs or individuals looking for personal brand voice, and or solopreneurs who can't really hire or afford a fractional executive of any sort, much less chief marketing officer. And so I wrote the book to really break it down and tell people, at the end of the day, it just needs to be genuine. And self-awareness is a big aspect of it, and that falls under qualitative data. You need to know yourself. And if you don't have that self-awareness, or even if you think you do, look at some of the data points and find out who's listening to you. So if someone says, a lot of people in the financial industry pay attention to me. All right, well, there's something there. Pay attention to that. So you've got the data behind it, but now let's look at the qualitative. Start asking them why. Start doing surveys. And if you're a solopreneur, it's super easy just to ask your clients. What do like a couple questions. NPS score, if you've ever heard of that, Net Promoter Score, super simple. 0 through 10, would you recommend me to a friend? That's it. And so 0 through 10, they give you their score. So that's your data for quantitative. And then you can follow up with another text box that says, please explain your answer. Bam, you just got your qualitative. And now you start paying attention to that. You can dump all of that content, the written content, into a word cloud. Super easy. You don't have to be a massive data analyst. Put it into a word cloud generator. They're free. There's a bunch online. And as you know, word clouds pop up. The biggest words are the ones that show up the most. That starts pointing you. You might hear someone say passionate. Someone might say energetic. Some people might say talks too fast. But those are words that I would have. You know what I mean? Like, those are all qualitative things that you could get. Cool. but that is how you're showing up in the world, and your brand voice is just that. Your brand voice is how you show up in the world. Based on that, and we were talking about this earlier, your brand voice is like the foundation of all of your stories. So if you're an employer, you have the same brand voice, but you might be looking to onboard the top talent. Your story to onboarding new hires is going to be different than the story you're going to share and the facts you're going to share with investors if you want an angel investor to come and give you money. And it might be different than if you're trying to attract new clients and customers. But if those three groups, a client, and a newly onboarded hire, and an investor, all sat down and had coffee. In fact, I even joked about this. I was like, if an investor, a client, and a hire walked into a bar, then what would they say if they sat down over whatever their drink of choice is about you? Well, each one got a different story from you because each one needed to get to a different end goal, but they're all informed by that same brand voice. And that is what would be the common denominator. And if it's not, if you don't have your brand solidified, that consistency is not there. And if one says one thing, one says another, and yet another, they're gonna be like, wait a minute, who is this company? Why are we doing work with them? I thought I trusted them, but that's what I thought. Now they're telling you that. So consistency is key. The three big things are, as I talk about in my book, is your brand voice needs to be genuine, it needs to be simple, it needs to be consistent. So there's that way.
Yeah, that's good. Well, there's some tangible things in there, guys, that you can try to message your clients and ask them would they recommend you. I like that, and like why or why not. So you can get some data as how you could get better. I really like that. It's a really cool idea. Um, that's awesome, guys. In wrapping up, I always have three final questions, and then anything we didn't touch on that you really want to make sure we leave our listeners with. And like I said, sure you have questions. Make sure to get Becky's book. All those links will be in the show notes. If you have questions for Becky, if you're looking for a fractional CMO, whatever, reach out to her directly. But first and final question is if someone's looking for their purpose, what's one sentence you could say that could help them find it?
Just know your why. Know what fuels you each day. What is it that gets you out of your bed? What's exciting? What energizes you? And that will get you to your purpose, I think. I mean, that's how it's not always that easy, but that's how I can say it in one sentence.
Well, I like it. Second question, what's a favorite quote and why?
Oh, well, I have it sitting right here. Don't play small. You have a lot to offer the world. And I have it sitting here next to me on my desk because I often need to remind myself, don't play small. What I have to offer the world is really important. I really can help people. And if I get quiet about it or I doubt myself, that just means somebody else out there who could have taken what was in my brain, they don't get it because I was playing too small. And once I get clients, don't play small because you want to really help them drive growth. So don't play small.
Good. Third and final question is what's one word or sentence you want on your gravestone?
Oh, sorry, you cut out. One word or sentence that what?
You want on your gravestone.
One word or sentence? Can I do a sentence?
Yeah, one word or sentence
I
you want on your gravestone.
did the thing.
I did the thing. I like that. That's cool. All right, you run into someone in a coffee shop, they listen to this, trying some of the things, working on their voice and their brand. What's something we didn't touch on, Becky, that you think would be really impactful to leave our listeners with?
Um, I think it's just really important to know how strong connections are with people and how stories are what support that. Stories have been around since the cave drawings tens of thousands of years ago, and they are going nowhere. I wholeheartedly feel like I could look in the crystal ball and tell you tens of thousands of years from now, stories are still going to be what brings human beings back to what makes us human. So there is AI out there. There are changes in careers. I think the average person that they say is going to have seven, not jobs, but seven different careers in their life. Just remember your connections with people are everything. They lift other people up, and at the end of the day, maybe selfishly, they really are what keep you going too.
Cool. I love that. Guys, as always, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, share. Like I said, reach out to Becky. If we can go out there, we can change one life for one starfish at a time. Together, we can change the world. Thanks for being on, Becky.
Probably.